Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, a podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, we feature professional Scrum trainers and other Scrum practitioners sharing their stories and experiences to help learn from the experience of others. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast. I'm your host, Dave West, CEO of Scrum.org here in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm very fortunate today to be with two of our professional Scrum trainers, our PSTs, Cesario Ramos and Ilya Pavelchenko. They're actually speaking to us from sunny Portugal at the moment, so I'm a little jealous about that. So we won't be talking about that. Welcome to the podcast, gentlemen.
Hello, welcome.
And it's great to have these two particular PSTs with us today because they've been doing for a long time, but for the last couple of years, I've been talking to them about organizational change and agile transformations at scale. And recently they published a fantastic book that I got the opportunity to read before it hit the shelves, Creating Agile Organizations, a Systemic Approach. This new book really does try to codify a lot of the ideas of both the structural or hard sides of systems change and with those more soft coaching side, the people side, which is really special. I know I learned lots from reading it. So before we start, gentlemen, and delve into the book, I'd love to hear a little about the genesis. Cesario, maybe you could start. Tell us why you wrote a book and what was your sort of motivation.
Yes, so I think there are two important reasons to share about why we wrote this book, and the first one is a personal reason in which we thought, we have all these things we do, all these techniques we use, all these approaches and that we have and thinking tools, and we use them a lot, and we spend a lot of time searching in our laptops to find the right one when we are at a different customer again. So we said, well, if we write it down in a book, then we can just reference our own book and actually make our own lives a bit easier that way. And so that was a personal reason. But the main reason was that we were seeing many approaches, many organizations trying to get to be more adaptable, but they were having a hard time. And we saw a lot of other approaches that we believed actually did more damage to the companies than any good, and were deviating from what we think and what we believe to be core Agile, core Scrum. And to make a statement against that, to put something in the market that we believe is closer to the core and we believe helps organizations make the next step in their adaptability journey. We came to this new book.
And I as I said, I was fortunate to get this access to this, I don't know, a few months before it was published with the intent to write a foreword, which I tried to do. And luckily there's another foreword that's much better as well. So there's two. But what I found that was really interesting with, these two, that it starts off lots of really cool techniques, lots of, it helped me actually deal with some of the other books I've read, providing more of a sort of grounded context for those things like systems thinking and the like. And then the second section is really talks about how you can apply it in context and really marry it up with that coaching kind of approach. So Ilya, you've been obviously trying to change organizations for many years. Tell me a little bit about some of those ideas in that first section that this book really codifies.
Well, you're right that the book consists of two parts. The first part is about conceptual ideas, about system thinking, about flow efficiency, resource efficiency, and of course, organizational design guidelines. I need to be honest that changing and becoming an agile organization is rather hard. It can take you many years to get rid of the waste and to find out how to bring agility into your organization and how to make it really work in your context. And during my practice, during 15 years, I found out that senior management are not aware of a connection between the organizational design and capabilities that organizational design develops. But we know that those capabilities, they are very tightly connected with the business goals and business strategy. And there's a gap between, so many senior management are aware of the business goals and strategic goals, but they're not aware of how they're connected with organizational design. The metaphor that we take is it's like training, a system of training. You go to the training and you get a coach, and if you get the incorrect training, you will not develop the right capabilities. So I think that the first part of the book is extremely important for the senior management, and we got very good and nice feedback from them. And the second part is more dedicated for Scrum masters and Agile coaches who actually do the adoption with their hands. But it's been, of course, initiated by senior management, and the first part of the book is for them. It's we have lots of organizational design guidelines that are split into three categories: structure, then processes and integration, and people practices. So this is very important. So in its core, the book is for senior management, I would say. That's the primary audience.
And so maybe that says to my sort of bias. I found the first section particularly valuable because I've read about some of those ideas in other books, not necessarily like I love the flow stuff. Obviously, I've read Reinerson's book and barely understood it, if ever understood it. And I found that the great thing about this book is it really made it very practical, very usable, and don't call me a senior manager though, I hope, but it was very accessible. And it was interesting what you said there, and I just want to pull on that for a second, Ilya. The senior managers didn't really understand that the connection between the goals of agility and delivering value, etc., and the capabilities necessary to support that. Can we just dive into that a little bit more? You know, do you think that traditional organizations don't really have that understanding of capabilities? Do you think there's something missing in the DNA of most traditional organizations?
Yes, of course, as we know that most of the modern organizations that follow the ideas of Taylor, those are correct ideas for the correct time, but most of the organizations, and that's why we talk about flow and resource efficiency, they are optimized for some different things like resource efficiency and different kinds of efficiencies, which is not compatible sometimes with and quite often with the agility and flow efficiency. And because the traditional organizational design and hierarchies and functional organizations, they develop different capabilities, then they don't come in comfort with agility and optimizing goals of agility. Those are different. And this is counterintuitive. So optimizing, having an incorrect organizational design that optimizes for the wrong goals doesn't help to reach your goals. So that's the problem. And in our book, we help them to understand that.
And I thought that was really interesting because ultimately, you know, I kind of probably knew this anyway, but I hadn't seen it written down in this way. But the optimization for a different purpose, optimizing the system for a different set of outcomes, how you manage risk, how you manage value, how you isn't just actually how you manage it, it's how you think about it. And also what I thought was really interesting about the book was ultimately it really did sort of say, well, hang on a minute, it's not that any of those things are wrong, it's just that what are you trying to achieve? Those things are great for a certain moment in time and make a lot of sense, but what are you trying to achieve? If you're trying to be responsive to a market, if you're trying to deliver value in situations that are unknown, if you're trying to, you know, rapidly change in response to a global pandemic or something crazy like that, then maybe you want to think about things slightly differently and think about, you know, take these Taylorist, this industrial viewpoint and sort of break it up. Cesario, so it sounds a bit like it's revolutionary thinking, but I didn't feel that when I read the book. Do you want to, I mean, it is new, it is unique, but I felt that it was very usable. And talk a little bit about the use, and that's particularly true in the second section where you really help these Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, change agents, take these ideas that are brought together in the first section and make real. So you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think so. Let's talk about your revolutionary word first. So we don't think it's revolutionary either, but we do think that we are bringing together what is already known, but we bring it together to make a complete view on changing organizations for adaptability. There are many books and many decades of research on any type of organizational design. But we only talk about one type. So we can narrow it down and just do that. And that is organizations that want to be adaptable. And by narrowing down, we are making some thinking mistakes that people have clear. And I just want to point out one thinking mistake that we think is very important. And that is the thinking mistake that people sometimes have in our experience, that they equal agility to speed. So they say, well, if we are flow efficient, then we are agile. And no, you're not. These are two very different things. So if you optimize for speed and you have teams that can do, even if the teams can do end-to-end work for you from idea to in the hands of the customer, you have many such teams. But if they only specialize on a narrow domain, you're still only fast. But if work overloads that narrow domain, then the other teams cannot help because, well, they know the other domains. So in the first part, we make also some other thinking mistakes, fundamental thinking mistakes. We make them obvious and clear by combining all these things, which are not revolutionary, but the combination is pretty powerful. Now, in the second part of the book, we try to make it super practical by giving lots of examples from real life, and then accompanying that by descriptions of workshop formats. So it goes from the concept, from the theory to, okay, give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps in which I can work with my group, work with my team, work with my senior manager to get things across, to get a organization design, for example, to get a team structure that works. So we make it super practical by doing that. And we do that from defining product groups to defining products to launching teams to guiding the product ownership. So we cover the things that we believe are essential for a good start of your transformation.
Yeah, I found that even though I wouldn't want to necessarily do some of those workshops because they look like they'd be quite challenging in terms of, it actually, in terms of it makes these things very apparent, some of the challenges of this Taylorist industrial viewpoint with this other approach. I thought it was really nice that you could actually take the ideas that the first section talks about and say, okay, so get this group of people together and concentrate on these 5 things and use this kind of workshop. Here you go. Let's have a go. And I thought that was fun. And I haven't seen that in other books. I've seen a lot on how to build workshops, and I've seen a lot on organizational design. I haven't seen the two combined together.
Yeah, so I just want to add to that we give one example of running such a workshop. That is for people who really are doing this for the first time. They have this as a support.
Yeah.
But if you are more experienced, you've done many workshops that are similar, then this is just one way. There are, of course, many other ways to achieve the same thing. But if you're like starting out, this could be a good starting point.
And even if you don't end up using the actual template, what it does is it makes you think about the things that maybe you haven't thought about before, which I thought was incredibly useful. So, all right. So we talked about the book. We've talked about how it's structured, the ideas, and thank you for that. So what do you think, I mean, somebody gets this book, what do you think the first thing that they should do, apart from read it, obviously, that's always handy. What do you think they should, what should be that first step after sort of like being inspired by this book? Ilya,
well, I would say,
maybe you want to share that.
Yeah, well, I would say that, you know, when we were writing this book and then we were in the process of getting the feedback for the book, there were two audiences. So the first audience were senior managers, and we get a pretty nice and brilliant feedback from them. They said, oh, wow, this is very cool. This is super cool. Now we get the guidelines and we know how to structure our organization. And the second audience were a bunch of Scrum Masters and Agile coaches. And you know that we didn't get very brilliant, super brilliant feedback from them. And why is that? We were thinking about that, and we found out that, you know, the first thing you need to do after reading this book is giving it to the senior manager. Because to apply all those ideas that we talk about in the first part of the book, you need a supportive senior manager. For example, now I'm have an engagement with a client of one Eastern bank, and I'm working with senior manager there. And this Scrum team is working on the organizational design. They are trying to redesign half of the bank. And this team consists of senior managers and the manager of the board. And so alone, Scrum Masters and Agile coaches, they won't be able to do that. So just give a book to the senior manager, maybe to the board members. This is extremely important, otherwise it won't work. It's about redesign, seriously redesigning your organization. So that's my recommendation, giving it to senior managers.
Wow, that's awesome. Cesario, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, so once you have given the book to the senior managers, then what I would say is, and you read the book, then I would say just start with the go-see, as we call it. Let's study how the work is working in your organization and get that out in the open, get that transparent to the teams, and surely also transparent to the senior managers. Why do we talk about senior managers? Because they have the power to design, to turn the design nodes of the org. So once this transparency is there, and you created this understanding together with them, they feel a little bit of ownership, and they also will feel a little bit of responsibility for the performance of their current organization. And if this performance is not what they would like it to be, if they believe that they need a different performance, they now have an understanding of how themselves contribute. So the teams and the senior managers with their policies, for example, with their design decisions, and also the teams, how they themselves contribute to this current performance. And that will be the starting point of now, okay, now that I feel this responsibility, now I am I have the possibility to decide to do something about that. And that can only come after this fundamental step of seeing why it is the way it is and acknowledging that you yourself contributed to it.
But obviously not blaming yourself, because as a potential senior manager, I obviously take no responsibility for any of it. Well, thank you. This has been far too short. We have, I wanted to delve into some of those misunderstandings that you talked a little bit about, Cesario. I want to spend more time talking about some of those workshops. I want to spend a lot more time talking about how you measure success, which is talked about particularly around flow and that sort of that flow efficiency stuff. But we have no time today, unfortunately. So I think there's some great opportunities for future podcasts as we unpick and unravel these ideas that are plaguing the world as we wrestle with this shift from the industrial world, oil and mass production, to this digital world where anything is possible and you can build cars that drive themselves or spaceships that land on boats, which is really, really, really amazing. So thank you for spending the time today. We are here at the Scrum.org community podcast. I was your host. I was fortunate enough to have Cesario Ramos and Ilya Pavenchenko with me today. They're actually speaking to us from Lisbon, Portugal. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. Thank you, the listeners, for attending, and hopefully there'll be future podcasts with these two participants as we explore organizational change and trying to build that agile organization of the future. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.